This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by Greenworks Consults, a company run by a longtime listener to the show, Jason, who's an expert when it comes to helping businesses get better at doing business. Learn more about what Greenworks Consults is up to over at greenworksconsults.com, with works spelled W-O-R-X. That's greenworksconsults.com. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Wednesday, June 24th, 2020, and you're tuned in to episode 955 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Bruce Barcott over at Leafly leads off the day's news with a pickup of a very large industry story with national legs, as the nation's criminally corrupt Attorney General William Barr, appointed by the equally criminally corrupt President Donald Trump to ease his seizure of power, used his office to direct the Department of Justice's Antitrust Division to devote an inordinate amount of its resources to going after legal cannabis deals, to the point where a former official and current whistleblower is testifying today over the matter. John W. Elias, former chief of staff within the Justice Department's Antitrust Division, said that at one point his office had 1/3 of its total caseload devoted to the cannabis industry, which is just disgusting if you spend a few seconds thinking about it. All of this was done because, according to Elias, Attorney General Barr does not like marijuana. That's a gross misuse of office that is also one of many disgusting abuses of power being flexed right now in front of all of us by the traitorous, corrupt, and anti-American Trump administration. Read this story. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website over at mjtodaydaily.com. Jumping up to Canada, we have marijuana giant Aurora Cannabis getting smaller as it announced that it is laying off 700 employees and closing down 5 grow and production facilities as part of an overall restructuring. Aurora also said that it will move to centralize its production and processing facilities in 3 locations in Edmonton, Ontario, and British Columbia. This follows closely the leaving of President Steve Dobler, whose retirement you might remember hearing about here on The Daily. Aurora is also taking a $140 million Canadian or $100 million US charge on inventory, mostly trim that it does not expect to be able to sell. This is another good one to read in full. Eli McVeigh closes out today's top stories with a chart showing how the first week of legal adult use sales in Massachusetts went following 2 months of being closed due to the coronavirus. Regular listeners will remember that Massachusetts saw its adult use shops closed, but thankfully not its medical dispensaries, by order of Governor Charlie Baker, just as coronavirus closings started happening in the U.S. In the weeks leading up to the pandemic breaking through our collective conscience in March, Massachusetts adult use shops were selling around $12 to $13 million a week in sales, without ramping up ahead of the industry's closings to the $15 million per week level. According to Marijuana Business Daily's chart, the first week of adult use sales, which took place right at the end of May, had $13.6 million in sales flow through the dispensary. Not great, not terrible. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz it in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Greenworks Consults, a company run by a longtime listener to the show, Jason, who's an expert when it comes to helping businesses get better at doing business. It's almost a fact in business that there are always parts of your operations that could be tuned up and made more efficient. It's just hard to see and stay on top of all the things all the time. It's also a fact that those inefficiencies add up and roll over each and every month, draining money away from your bank account that you should be holding on to. The pros at Greenworks Consults make their living by knowing all the ways to catch, monitor, and fix those costly drains on your resources. Save yourself money and engage with Jason and his team at Greenworks Consults, which you can learn more about over at their website at greenworksconsults.com, with works spelled W-O-R-X. That's greenworksconsults.com. All right, time for the Blitz. Kyle Yeager is back with his second of three headlines with a look at a proposed legislative amendment in Iowa that was just shot down during a floor vote that would have, had it not been scuttled, decriminalized psilocybin, the active chemical compound in psychedelic mushrooms. Republican Representative Jeff Shipley tried to attach his legislation to a general budget bill, which was likely a contributing factor to it being voted down. Picking back up on a storyline we just talked about yesterday, Harvest Health and High Times Holding Corporation say they've closed on their nearly all-stock $67.5 million deal that will put High Times in the retail business with the transfer of 10 marijuana dispensaries. As Deborah Borchard at Green Market Report has it, this deal is full of all kinds of quirks and twists, including pending litigation over the ownership of certain dispensaries with social equity program participants. As with most things High Times these days, this one's worth a read, if only for the distraction. Massachusetts-based company Tilt Holdings just released financial results for its first fiscal quarter for 2020, with reported revenue of $42.5 million, up 27% from the previous quarter, on top of a positive adjusted EBITDA of $1.7 million. Tilt said it had just over $8 million in cash and cash equivalents on hand as of March 31st. Always happy to see some positive numbers. New Cannabis Ventures has more on this if you need it. We have another chart for Marijuana Business Daily, this time looking at the growth in the number of new cannabis dispensary licenses issued up in Canada by the Ontario Cannabis Store. Ontario has been famously slow in rolling out its legal cannabis industry, with just 100 authorized stores as of last month, even as provinces like Alberta have more than 4 times that number. A good one to read in full if having a solid handle on Canada's market is good for you. Troubled multi-state cannabis operator Ianthus has been issued a demand for repayment by investment firm Gotham Green Partners as part of a storyline we've covered a few times now, with Ianthus failing to make certain interest payments to Gotham Green in April that it also expects to miss later this month. Trading of Ianthus stock was halted yesterday on the Canadian Securities Exchange after a cease trade order was issued. Another one you can find in full over Marijuana Business Daily. With our second of 2 stories today, Deborah Borchard over Green Market Report covers a mildly interesting story up in Canada, with license provider Organogram issuing a short announcement that it was the subject of a as-of-yet uncertified lawsuit that is seeking damages against, quote, many of the largest Canadian cannabis companies, unquote. Following that bid, which did not come with much more information, Organogram also said it was embarking on a redesign of its newly launched Trailer Park Buds brand, inspired by the popular Trailer Park Boys television series. And finally for today, Kyle Yeager has a story that helps takes us out on a less somber note with this absolute gem of an opening line. Quote, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs is selling pairs of aesthetically questionable hemp toe shoes to military veterans, unquote. If you're familiar with the Vibram 5 Fingers line of shoes, you know what Kyle is talking about. If you're not familiar, consider yourself lucky, as they are definitely one of the uglier types of shoes around. Kyle picked up on the fact that the U.S. Veterans Affairs Veterans Canteen Service is now offering up the new hemp Vibram 5 Fingers at a discount to military veteran shoppers. Kyle's story has all the details and gory photos of the ugly shoes. Zip over if you're brave enough. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Greenworks Consults, and to our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Jay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with Marijuana Today. Today.
One take, Shay. One take.